Welcome to Happy Hour, Olivia. Your work can be seen at Starbucks, Prism Boutique, Kevin Hart's restaurant, Hart House.
When I was like 3 or 4, I just started drawing stick figures and stuff.
Okay.
And I was so hyped because I was like, I'm gonna show my cousins. First of all, I'm an ESL student. I speak Lao. When I was a child, I was learning English too. I didn't know the difference between gender at this age. I gave it to my cousins. She was like, why is this girl named Hector?
You said you wanted to actually be a teacher.
The Zoom for teaching. Oh, they just did a cartwheel out of the frame. They're gone. And it was just hard to see how we were being treated as teachers.
You ended a very long-term relationship recently.
Yes.
It was 9 years?
9 years. I remember I was 105 pounds. Super stressed, did not have an appetite. I started to mask myself in smoking weed a lot because I just didn't want to think about it. I started to create out of my need to express. It just started to get more eyes. As I'm reflecting, I feel like a lot of it was a cry for help.
Welcome to Happy Hour, Olivia.
Hi.
Are we excited? Guys,
I'm very
this looks
excited.
like a really nice studio, but we're actually in your friend's clothing boutique store, and it actually looks quite nice, honestly. Thank you to April. Shout out April for allowing us to use your space. Your clothes are very cute. I might even shop around after. But this is Olivia Sawai.
Hello.
And I just saw that you liked one of my happy hour posts, and I clicked into your profile, and I was like, oh my gosh, we need to get this person on the podcast.
I'm happy to be here.
Let's get to the intros. That's my favorite part. Today, we have Olivia. You're a self-taught artist and also a muralist based in Los Angeles. So that's why we're able to do this in person. I'm so excited. So your passion for creating, you said, began as an act of self-care and expression. You use your work to spread mental health awareness, build community. A lot of the digital prints you sell, it consists of funky, abstract color blocking shapes. It also has a lot of encouraging pro-mental health typography. And in terms of your mural art, your work can be seen at Starbucks, Prism Boutique, and Kevin Hart's plant-based fast food restaurant, Hart House. So before we kind of go and talk, I have so many questions for you. Okay. It's actually insane. I don't know if we can cover all of it, but I was like, dang. It also just has been, I'm already tangenting, but this show, finding these guests such as yourself has reminded me of people are interesting. I'll reach out to people. For example, when I saw your page, I did some preliminary scrolling and stalking, and I was and that gave me a good impression to reach out to you. But then once I get to really know the person, and many times in our interview too, I'll hear things I've never even heard about, or I just wouldn't expect from my guests, and it's actually pretty fascinating. It's also very humbling that I get to just listen and to process a lot of thoughts that people have, and I'm really honored. Anyway. Okay, so when we were on the phone a few weeks ago, and I do want to bring up you had a very crazy apartment story that I would like you to share to the listeners.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I've been on the search of finding a studio apartment for myself because it would be the first time that I'm actually going to have my own place. And this one came about. It was just really random. I was looking on, I think it was Zillow, late night. And I was like, oh, this seems really cute. It's in an area that I really love. Let me go see it. So I booked an appointment and I fell in love. It has all the vintage, personality traits of an old building. And I was like, I love that. Fast forward, I signed the lease, but there was a tenant still there. So I basically had to wait a couple weeks for it to be ready for me.
Were you already packing?
Yes. Boxes, everything, you name it. I'm okay, I'm ready, ready to move. And I was at my mom's because I had stored some stuff at her place. And I basically get this phone call and they're like, hey, Olivia. I'm thinking, oh, is it ready for me?
Yeah.
It's early. Okay, I love that. We have bad news. The apartment complex caught fire and it affected your unit. And I think when I heard that, I was like, wait, can I cuss?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I was like, are you fucking joking? I didn't think it was going to be anything too crazy. I'm like, okay, it's just a small fire, right? Little did I know, they disclosed to me that the whole building had to be evacuated. They were like, there's 2 options: cancel the lease or offer you another unit in the next building that didn't catch fire. I'm like, okay, let's do that. I'm like, it's still going to be in the same area. It's not the one that I signed for, but whatever, we can make it work. I'm just distraught at this point because I'm like, what's happening? Like, I was so ready to move boxes, like literally buying furniture and storing it. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll go see the unit. So I went to go see it, and I was getting ready to call them to let them know I'll take it. And then they beat me to it. And they're like, hey, Olivia, we have bad news.
They're like, they probably.
I felt like someone was like punching me.
Like, apartment hunting. I mean, in a big city, it's just terrible. So
yeah,
I mean, it's not meant to be.
It wasn't.
No.
And so they were like, we have to give the unit to somebody that was living in the building that caught fire. We have to rehome them. And I'm like, okay, then why did you have me come see the unit?
Yeah.
So it was kind of like unprofessional. And I just felt like they were playing, like tugging with my emotions a little bit. Because this is not like a job interview or something. It's like my place, like that I'm living in,
Yeah.
I got off the phone with him and I just literally bawled my eyes out. And I was like, maybe there is a silver lining. I just can't see it right now. I think I was just grieving. Like, I'm so sensitive. I feel like, number one, my moon is in Cancer.
Okay.
So
gotcha.
I'm super sensitive, emotional, and I was like, let me just get it out. Let me just cry. It took me a couple of days to kind of like really accept the fact that that wasn't the place for me. I had almost like, when I talked to you on the phone, I was like laughing about it. And that was the first time I was laughing about it because when people asked me, because I was like, I'm getting ready to move into my new place. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited for you. And they're like, how's the move? I'm like, it's not moving.
Do you deal with challenges through humor? Because that's how I always try to cope. I guess
Yes.
cope with humor. Like when I got into an accident like 2 months ago, like I was
A
literally,
car accident?
yeah, I literally
God.
like recorded myself sobbing and also like making a joke. And I was like, this is how like Gen Z, like I guess like millennials too, how they cope. They just do humor. I'm like, but sometimes it's like a way to mask, obviously, what you're going through. And I'm so sorry to go through that.
I think it was a blessing in disguise. I think to some extent I do find comfort in humor when things like that happen because I'm like, life is crazy. Like, we just don't know what's going to happen. And obviously I allow myself to feel and like get frustrated and just feel all the feelings that come up with it. But I think humor is like the most, the primary way of like coping for me.
Yeah, but you also have a pet gecko too that you were worrying about.
I know. Oh my gosh. That's what I was thinking. Had I moved in already and that place caught fire, I would have lost her and my belongings.
Yeah.
And I would have just been I wouldn't be able to forgive myself if I lost my gecko. Like, she's literally my life. And that sounds so silly, but she's been here with me since my big life changes. So
yeah.
I got
they
her.
grow in size?
Yeah. I got her when she was a baby. So she was like this.
Oh, like an eraser.
Yeah.
She's like an eraser. Oh my God. So anyway, that was a big life change that happened to you recently. Let's go back in time now. So you said that you're self-taught.
Yes.
And I always find it really interesting when a lot of artists say that they're self-taught. So like, what was your origin story on at what age did you start to get in contact with art?
I feel like as a child, I've always been creative. And this is a story that I've never told anybody. Saved it for this one.
Okay.
It's kind of embarrassing, but when I was like 3 or 4, I just started drawing, like stick figures and stuff. And I was so hyped because I was like, I'm gonna show my cousins. And I did like a whole flip book of stick figure faces. And I had just been learning, first of all, like I'm an ESL student. So like, I don't know.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
ESL, yeah.
Yeah. So even though I kind of dabbled between the two, like, languages, so I speak Lao, and also like when I was a child I was learning English too, but it was so confusing because I would go to school they spoke English, and then come home, and then it was like Lao, and then I was like, I'm confused. Which a lot of people don't talk about, but I was learning, English names, like American names. And I had drawn these people, and I remember one was like Jessica, and then like Laura.
Yeah.
I didn't
Bob,
know.
Eric, McKenna. Yeah.
And literally, I didn't know the difference between gender at this age. Like, not too sure. And like, I gave it to my cousins, and I was so excited. I'm like, this is so cool, huh? Like, because I looked up to them.
Yeah.
And she was like, why is this girl named Hector?
Oh my gosh. Oh my god.
I was so proud. And then when she pointed that out, I was like, is that not a cool name?
So English wasn't your first language then, or did you learn it simultaneously at school?
Simultaneously. Yeah. And it was like really confusing, to be honest, because I was in ESL classes, but I was the only Cambodian-Lao person in the class. So I ended up learning Spanish.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was so interesting because I was like, what's happening to where like I understand Lao, Spanish, and English all at once, and like I can communicate with my friends, and they were like teaching me. Obviously, they taught me like the bad words first.
Yeah.
They're like laughing. But yeah, like I learned Spanish in that class too. And my first best friend, Sonia, like taught me Spanish too. And so I'm not really fluent, but like I can understand.
I took Spanish in high school, and I still continue on Duolingo. But it's like I can like read it, like a broad sense of what's going on.
Yeah.
I can like write it. I mean, to speak, oh my gosh, it's like lentamente, por favor. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you have to say it slowly. Yeah. Like one time when my family accidentally drove to Mexico. Long story short, we accidentally drove to Mexico, and we were like waiting in line for like 3+ hours to go back to the border. There were like so many vendors out there that are like, there were like people trying to wash your car, and like people like trying to sell fruit, and we were slowly approaching this fruit stand, and my mom was like, everyone looked at me and was like, you can use your Spanish to order us fruit. And I was like so nervous. I was like hyping myself in the car, and I like rolled down the window. I'm like, un bol de frutas largo. And it was like a $5 bowl. But I was like, these ladies, I mean, they gotta hustle to get their earnings in a day. So they gotta do what they gotta do. Anyway, like what did you learn in ESL? Like, so ESL means English as a second language,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, how was your ESL experience like? I have so many friends who have done ESL.
Honestly, I really enjoyed that class because it was like really intimate too. I think this is so fucked up, but I think my teachers thought I had like a learning disability. So I would have to, like, I would have to read during recess. And honestly, maybe I did. I don't know. Comprehension wasn't there because English was not my first language. So when I'm reading and out loud, like reading out loud, and they're like, okay, so what, like, can you tell us a summary? I'd be like, no. You know? It
goes in one ear, goes out the other.
Yeah, because I think I needed a mentor, a teacher that was going to understand, okay, English is her second language. Yeah. And a lot of my teachers were white. So like they didn't understand that, you know? And then I felt for a really long time until I got to, I think like my first or second year of college, like I thought I was stupid, which is so sad because I was like, I don't understand any of this. And, you know, like, is it because I'm dumb? And then I met other people that had the same experience during like college. And I was like, I'm not dumb. Like I just learn a different way. Yeah. And it takes a little bit more time. Yeah. You know, because my teachers would ask me the same questions and they would get frustrated with me. I'm like, I don't know. You know?
I agree with you because also like I didn't grow up in the States. And so even though I would say like I'm very fluent in like it's like my native language as well, I didn't grow up here. So there are certain idioms that people use here that I'm like, I call them like the white people phrases. That, like, so when someone says something, I'm like, what? Like, what is that? Like, I've never heard of that. So, yeah, a lot of idioms I just like never really grew up listening to. Also, I'm really curious to learn about like what was the ethnic makeup at the schools that you went to growing up? And, like how were you treated as a kid?
So a lot of like, I grew up around a lot of Latinos and like Hispanics and like the Black community too. I also have a Black family. So it was just more like comfortable to be around those both communities because I was always welcomed by both communities. And it was so weird though, because I felt like I couldn't identify with either because I knew I wasn't Latina or like Hispanic or I wasn't Black.
Yeah.
You know, so I was like, I'm just Asian.
On
But
the
I'm
fringes.
I'm a dark Asian though, you know? And so for a long time I didn't think about my identity. It wasn't anything that I was like pressed about. But as I got older, I was like, where do I belong? I don't know if you can relate, but I'm sure others can too, maybe. But my family wanted to assimilate so bad that like it was kind of like, oh, this is our culture, but put like being American first.
Yes. Yeah.
You know,
Okay,
because we don't want any like problems. We don't want any issues about our ethnicity or nothing like that.
Yeah.
So that was a really big issue because I was like, well, should I be proud to be like Khmer, Cambodian, or Lao? I didn't have that sense of pride growing up. So now I'm tapping back into it unapologetically, you know, and like just representing my community. But it's just sad because I feel like I lost it along the way.
Yeah.
And then like
I get you.
in my culture, it's like, you know, they want to assimilate so bad to like the American culture to avoid like racism. But then my family would kind of like give me a hard time because they're like, oh, you're American. Or like your Lao is not like correctly spoken. And I'd be like, I'm confused. What do you want from me?
It's true. I have a few things that it came to my mind that I wanted to bring up. So first of all, like a big shout out to the Black community because like, so I had a previous guest, Ariel. She's Lao, Italian, Black.
Oh, wow.
And she also grew up feeling
That's
like,
dope.
I don't know where I belong because the Asian community was like, who are you? And then and then the Italian community is like, who are you? But the Black community really took her in growing up. And I had a conversation recently with a friend who went to school in Illinois, and she worked in the South Side of Chicago for a while. And like the Black community really took her in as well. And I was like, so shout out to the Black community.
Yes, we love the Black community.
Yeah, so that's very sweet to hear, though. Secondly, I have a similar, like a different font experience. Like, what is that experience called? It's like the same but different font.
Yes.
When you talked about like assimilating. Well, because I didn't grow up in the States, but I went to international schools my entire life. Because the international school systems, at least the ones that I went to, were taught under a Western lens. I did try to heavily assimilate into being like American, you know? It's because I am Taiwanese, Chinese American, and I always thought like growing up being American was the
like
prime example. Yeah. Of like being like the highest level of a human being, you know, being American. Like in the summers, I'd come to like San Francisco and everything's so grand and big. And I'd go to the pier and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is literally, being American is so great. And like speaking English, like even even when I'm an Asian, it's so great. But like,
you know, I just thought about that meme of like, am I better than everybody else?
That sounds exactly like the audio too. But yeah, for the longest time, like under the international school system, it's like I really leaned into being American. But then as I got older, I realized like how important it is to also, even I was living in Asia, like I was living in a bubble at times, you know? But I feel like recently I've been, and it was over the couple years too, I really want to try to like equal out my different identities. And I'm like, I lean very heavily into my Taiwanese identity now because like there's a lot of pride that I should be bringing into like my Asianness. And so that's something that like, you know, what you said to assimilate, I was like, yeah, I kind of feel that way, but also in a different sense. But okay, so you said you wanted to actually be a teacher.
Yes.
But then that kind of changed, that goal changed.
Yeah.
So tell me like why you decided to switch gears.
So I actually quit in 2020, but I'm gonna spill the tea about the public education system.
Right.
I went to school, so my background is in education, but I also have a degree in the arts, which just means that like I have knowledge in all of the subjects. Like when I went to get my undergrad, I basically learned the history of art, which was one of my favorite courses, the history of film, the history of math, which was so confusing, the history of science. Yo, my brain hurts.
Were you like a liberal arts studies?
Yeah, liberal arts. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and that was really crazy. But then I'm like, wait, I'm a well-rounded person.
Yeah, she's a Renaissance girl. They should rename that major into Renaissance girl.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
I basically learned the history of basically everything.
Yeah.
Which was cool, you know. And I got my master's in education and my teaching credential at Fullerton too. So I got my teaching credential. I was teaching for actually a couple years, and then actually before I got my credential, I was still teaching at an after-school program. So I've been teaching for a really
couple
long
years.
Time. Yeah,
then? Okay.
probably like 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
I remember 2018. I was like, I'm gonna start painting. It was a way of like coping with stress, and I think that was my first time ever experiencing anxiety and depression. And
Was it? What did you think it slowly crept up, or it was that year that suddenly it just came at you, the anxiety and the depression?
I think it slowly crept up, and because I was under so much pressure of school, because that was when I think I graduated, I was like, is this even worth it? I'm like, what am I doing? You know, I just started thinking about just questioning my career choices. I was like, well,
like, how old were you at the time, just for context?
24, 25. Do the math.
I started to have like, I'm 24 now, and so this is actually the year where I've started to have a lot of like doubts and like career switches, and
that's normal.
Like, so
I will tell you.
Okay, that's good to hear.
You're on the right path.
Okay, continue.
So I started questioning everything, but I was like, I'm just gonna keep going because it's convenient.
Yeah.
It's consistent. It's what my family wants to make them proud, and I kind of kept the art thing to the side. But I went public with it on Instagram. Also, I didn't have Instagram for like 3 years. I think that was such a crazy era for me to not have Instagram. Like, who does that? Like, no Instagram at all, because I was like, mental health crashing, please.
Right.
Like, I need.
Oh my gosh, my time on Instagram is like abysmal. But I lived in China, and so I remember I was like one of the first people to like download Instagram in like 6th grade, and like the first image I posted was like a fish tank, and I've like put a really cheesy filter on it. All those like old filters.
Shout out to the old filters.
And then China banned Instagram, and so I didn't use Instagram for many years when I lived in China, and it was only when I came back to Taipei for vacation, I'd be like, yeah, I can log into Instagram, and I go like, guys, I'm back. So that was my Instagram. Yeah, I was on Instagram that much growing up too, because I couldn't use Instagram, I couldn't use Google, I couldn't use Facebook, I couldn't use YouTube.
Wow.
Like, all of that was banned. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And at the time, like, we were still able to use Google until like later on in my adolescent years that it was banned. And so we had to use like Bing.com. Like,
Bing?
Anyway,
Wow. Shout out to
tangent.
Bing.
But yeah, you were on Instagram for a very long time.
I
and
wasn't.
You decided to get on it on what year?
2018.
2018.
Yeah. Like literally the same year. So I think it was summer of 2018. It was like, I'm gonna start painting, took pictures, like started posting, and it started to gain a lot of traction. A lot of eyes from Europe and Spain.
Because they're into like abstract art, or?
I think so. And I think my style like leaned more towards like, I would say like architecture of like maybe Spain.
Yes.
Or,
yes.
I was really into architecture at that time. And I started painting, and I got my first art show like the same year, like later on in the fall.
Wow.
And I was like, this is cool. This is dope. Okay, maybe this could be a thing.
Yeah.
And then I signed like this contract with Slowdown Studio.
Yes.
Yeah, you're familiar. And
They sell artists' work, right? Is that what they do?
I was working with them, which was really cool because when I first made my Instagram, I was like, I want to work with them. And then I was like thinking about what's another brand that I would like to work with. And I was like, Starbucks. I want to work with Starbucks. I literally was saying these things out loud jokingly because I was like, I'm just an amateur artist, you know? I'm like, but I want to work with Starbucks. So I'm in my credential program and I get an email from Starbucks, the art director.
Wow.
For this project. And I'm like, is this a scam?
Wow.
So I'm like reading it in class and I'm like,
while you're still teaching?
yeah. And I'm like, it's over. It's over.
Goodbye to the kids. Oh gosh.
And I was like, holy shit. Like, this is my first project ever. And it's with Starbucks. So yeah, fast forward. The art route has just been showing me that it's the right path to take. All these opportunities keep coming my way and I'm like, okay. And I just keep taking them. And so when the pandemic hit, the Zoom for teaching, the Zoom department for
yeah, I was a student.
a mess,
Zoom,
girl.
yeah.
A mess.
I did Shakespeare acting on Zoom. I was like, I had to do my monologue in my college dorm with like two other roommates. And I was rehearsing my monologue. It was from The Winter's Tale. And, you know, college dorm walls, they're thin. And so I was rehearsing it and my professor was like, okay, try singing it. And I was like, damn. I sang so loud. And then I came out of my room. And then
wait, can you sing?
I mean, I can. I did take musical theater lessons.
Okay.
To get a part in the Addams Family, which I got because I worked so hard for that part.
Period.
But I like leave my room and my two roommates on the couch are like, nice. Yeah, that was my Zoom. But you were on the other side. You were on the other side of it. And
yeah. So when I would see like my students, like I would just lose them. Like, and I was teaching.
And they're younger kids.
Yeah,
too.
second grade.
It stunts their growth.
I see them like in the corner and they're like this. And they're like, oh, they just did a cartwheel out of the frame. They're gone. It's done for them. So, and it was just hard to see how we were being treated as teachers. Like, it was like, well, you got to show up even if we don't know what the fuck is going on.
Yeah.
And like, we don't really care. You just do what I tell you to.
Yeah.
And it got really like, I was like, okay, am I going to quit? And like, am I not? Like, what should I do? And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to quit.
Yeah.
And I walked away and my students were like, good luck. Word got around that like, you know, I quit, and the previous students I was teaching in the credential program, they were 5th grade students. They somehow found my email and they were like, you're so inspiring. I love that you're chasing your dreams. And I was like, wow. See, this is why I do what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was really nice to like receive those messages through email. But I was like, okay, I'm going to take a step forward. I'm going to take that leap of faith. And I've just been creating ever since. And like, even during the pandemic, that's when the graphic art was birthed.
And it's also so shareable online too, which you probably didn't know. It's like, this is going to be shareable, but it is, especially in the pandemic when someone needs like a word of encouragement. I did notice that like starting around, at least as a pattern that I see on your feed, like starting around like 2020 until now, you started to put a lot of like encouraging typographic, is that how you say it? Typographic digital art prints that have like, oh, I did save a few. What were they called? And I was like reading through them. I was like, yes, this is good encouragement.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it says, there's one that says, comparison diminishes your light. Everything in life is a practice. You are not your circumstance. And to also embrace your softness, which is actually something that I really want to do. So like a lot of your art has been very like pro mental health. And do you think that volume of art that you produced was because of like the pandemic and what you were going through and like having a crisis on like what you should do in life?
Yes, it was all connected to that. And I think when I first started creating, I was like, I feel really down about the uncertainty of the world. You know, I knew that I wasn't alone, but just to express myself was so healthy for me, because if I'm not expressing myself, anxiety or whatever negative energy that I'm thinking or putting onto myself, it manifests in my body.
Yes.
It shows up mostly in my shoulders and my stomach. I have digestive problems.
I got you. Are you an IBS girl? I have leaky gut.
You do?
I have leaky gut, yeah.
Oh my God. So I was like, they were trying to diagnose me for that, but then they were like, you just have IBS, like really bad. And I was like, well, I did eat hot Cheetos for a really long time.
There's so many people in America with digestive issues, which comes to show that there is something wrong with our culture and our diet that severely needs to change. When I grew up in Asia, I was as healthy as a horse. I come to America, and with the stress, the toxic work culture here, I get PCOS.
The air,
I get leaky gut. I'm like, damn. Like
let me move back.
Like living in America is literally a hazard.
It is.
Like,
it's
and
crazy.
It's not even a hyperbole.
It's crazy. So like, even when I'm feeling, that's my intuition. I feel like even if I'm feeling something in my stomach, I'm like, something's not right. But yeah, like I started to create out of like my need to express, and it just started to like get more eyes, and people were like, oh, thank you so much for sharing this. And for me, I was having imposter syndrome because I was like, I'm just trying to like,
are you the right person,
right,
to be sharing this,
right? And then as I started creating even more, like it was really prominent in 2021. As I'm reflecting, I feel like a lot of it was a cry for help for me. Like these are the changes that I want to see, but I don't know how to get there.
Yeah, most of the advice that we give to others, it's like we need to apply to ourselves as well.
Yeah, so that's why I've taken a year off. Because I'm like, I'm sharing these words, let me live by them. And I usually would create every single day, like post a graphic, post some words. But I've just been, taking a step back, kind of observing what works, what doesn't work. And I'm really getting back into like connection. So like community, and then like just being with my family and like my friends, because I feel like I can get lost in the sauce a little bit.
Well, I actually do want to learn more about your family, because you brought up that you were under a single parent household, and just like the history of the Lao Cambodian community of coming to America. I did like read a bit about it, but I would love for you to share it if you would like as well. It's just like I read that they fled the Khmer Rouge. Your parents, or is it your family?
My whole family. So basically my mom, my grandma, my grandfather, and then like my uncles.
And they got separated, did they? Or were they still able to stick together?
They were able to stick together, but then like my other family members all got separated. One family went to the Philippines. One family landed in Maryland.
Yes.
And then my family just went straight from Thailand, which was where they were in refugee camp. To Long Beach.
Yeah, because there was a Thai family.
Yes.
Was there a Thai family that
that
sponsored you guys?
Yeah. Which for a long time I thought an American family sponsored us. That's why I was like, I love being American.
Yes.
But then I found out it was a Thai family. And I was like, wow, I wish I could have met them, but I don't really know what happened to them. But shout out to them, because they really saved my family. And I think my family was in refugee camp for like almost a year. My mom has a picture of her in refugee camp, and she's just like sitting on a chair. And I think there's another photo of her just holding like a number, like no name, number. She was just number, which is crazy to think about.
And it was not safe, like living. And even though they were not in like Cambodia anymore, I mean, like it was during the time in like the 60s or something, like the Vietnam War was also happening as well. So like the US was dropping bombs like over that area. So it was just not safe like anywhere you went. And then also the fact that she was also in a refugee camp.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine. I just could not imagine. That's why I'm so grateful that my family like got here safely. Like just the trek of walking from Cambodia barefoot to the border of Thailand just to seek refuge was like, I can't wrap that concept around my head, because I've been so blessed. There was family members lost along the way. Like some of them got killed because they got caught by the communists, I just couldn't imagine like being in that frantic state of like, we just have to do whatever it takes to get to safety.
Yeah. It's
just mind blowing for me to think that I'm here, and I feel like my purpose is bigger than me. I think that really settled in last year, and I was like, Sawai is a legacy. Like, my grandfather did so much while he was alive. He was a part of like so many communities, like the Cambodian community. He always did community work, and I always saw him doing something. And he like was a co-founder of one of the temples in Fontana, which is in inland. And I'm like, I want to be like that, you know? Like, he was just so about his community, and he was just so outgoing. And I'm like, I have to continue that legacy, like value him, because he was like that father figure in my life, you know? And so when he passed, I was like I feel like I don't have that father figure. My family took it pretty hard, especially my mom, because that was like his only daughter, you know? And I felt her pain too. Like, I really internalized it, because I would see her crying in the car. There was this one moment where I think he was still alive, but like, we just knew that it wasn't gonna like end very well. And I was in the car with her, and she just put on like Sade By Your Side, and she was just bawling her eyes out. And I didn't know what to do, because I was like a kid, you know? But then like I internalized that as like, oh, like I wish I could take my mom's pain away.
Yeah.
And so every time I hear that song, it's so special.
But speaking of like legacy, like I think it's really cool that you've coined your official artist name as just like your family's surname, Sawai.
Yeah.
And was that also like to pay homage to your grandfather, or like what is the like tell me
background?
Deeper on like why you decided on that?
I actually didn't used to like my last name.
Yeah. Did you want to have like a white last name?
Yes.
What did you tell me?
I was like, I don't even want it to be like
I didn't like my
Sawai.
last name too.
Yeah. I love your last name.
Yeah, Cho. So in
I
the
love your last
past,
name.
like, because Cho in Mandarin, like Cho, it means like stinky.
Really?
Yeah. And so people are like, oh, Malay's smelly. Which is like, my friends would call me that, which is like, it's pretty endearing. But I was like, damn, I was like, it means smelly. But I've actually coined it. I mean, my Instagram username is Cho Train.
Yes. That's why I was like,
cute.
what? That's so dope.
Yeah.
Lao last names are long.
Yeah.
And for my last name, it's really interesting. I haven't like really done the ancestry.com thing, but my last name is a Japanese last name. An Indian.
Oh, it does sound Japanese now that you pointed
Sawai.
out. Oh,
Yeah.
But I read that it means mango, right?
And Kamaya means mango.
Oh, it's Kamai. Okay.
Yeah.
That's how you pronounce it. Kamai.
Yeah.
Got it.
A lot of people say Khmer, but you know, it's Kamai.
Kamai. Okay. I learned something.
But yeah, so I really wanted to pay homage to my grandfather, and I was like, didn't really think too much into it, but then I was like, you know what? I'm going to go by Sawai. Because everybody has been like, that's your last name? That's so dope. Like, it's really pretty. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. And then it just something just switched to me as I became like more in tune with myself and like my art. I'm like, I have to, you know, represent myself. Everybody now calls me Sawai. Like, even my best friends, they'll be like, oh, hey, Sawai. I'm like,
Do you prefer that?
I do. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I love that. Because it just makes me feel like super proud to like rep that name, you know? It's just crazy because when I made t-shirts that had like Sawai logo right here, a lot of people bought them, and
It sounds cool. It looks
like,
cool.
they're walking around with my last name. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's so, I'm just so grateful because at one point I was like, I don't like my last name, you know, because it's not American. It's not normal. And now I'm like flipping the script. I'm like, no. Also, when I get married, I'm not changing my last name.
Ooh. Love.
So my partner has to change their last name.
So my one of my roommates, also one of my best friends, Anna, her last name is Chen, and her super sweet Midwestern white boyfriend, but super sweet, his name is Mitch Fields. And Anna was like, I am not changing my name to Anna Fields. I don't want to be called Mrs. Fields. I'm like, oh my gosh, Mrs. Fields Cookie. I was like, okay, yeah, you keep your last name. I like Chen better. Yeah, it's like,
I love that for you, Anna. Yep.
Yeah, because her mom never changed her surname.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm like, okay, love that. So speaking about marriage, okay, I do want to pivot because you said that you ended a very long-term relationship recently.
Yes.
It was 9 years?
9 years.
So it for almost a decade long relationship, like when do you think was that moment when you started to feel that that relationship was not a healthy one anymore?
Now that I've had some time to reflect on like the separation. I call it separation because I've like basically we were married, you know? Man, it was a healthy relationship, and like the way that we like grew up together and blossomed was so beautiful, but I think we kind of just headed in different directions. And I was in denial when I realized that. Like I think year 7 or year 8, I was like, is anything gonna change? I think we both, I will say that like in my my perspective, I will take responsibility and accountability that I did get complacent. You know, I mean, like it was a long relationship. I think a lot of couples experience that. But what happens is the communication. Like I feel like if there is a safe space for you to be like, okay, I don't know if we're going in the same direction. Can we talk about it? I didn't do that because I felt really guilty for even thinking about separating.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, oh, like this is not normal. Like I just shamed myself basically. And I was like, I don't know how to deal with this. And basically like I didn't go about it the most effective and healthy way. Like I didn't talk about it because I just got so overwhelmed, you know, and I left the relationship. And I just had to be by myself because I was like, this is something that I never in a million years thought I would do, of like leaving my partner.
Yeah.
But I was just following what my gut was telling me. And it just seemed so crazy because even my friends were like, you know, they looked up to us as a couple. And I think a lot of people were like shook because they were like, even you guys like breaking up?
Yeah.
Like what's happening to humanity? But it's like, it just shows you that like everybody grows, and sometimes you can't take people with you if they can't see where you're headed, or if they don't share that like-minded perspective, you know. And it was really painful for me to really sit with that. I just feel like I was boxing myself into this place that I had outgrown for a while now. And it was getting really painful. I just didn't know how to handle it. Like, I remember, like, I was 105 pounds. Like, was not eating, super stressed, did not have an appetite. I started to, like mask myself and, like, smoking weed a lot because I just didn't want to think about it. And I would just want to numb myself. And I'm so glad because I've been 3 years, no alcohol. I'm so glad, like, I didn't have a relapse because I was so close. I was like, I'm just gonna drink and, you know, like everything will be okay. But then I kind of like turned to weed, and then I was like, this is not really effective for me. Like I'm just hiding like from my feelings. And my life literally turned upside down. And for a while I was like, why did I do this to myself? Because now life is hard. But then I'm like, but what if I stayed and said nothing?
Yeah.
You know? So there's always like that thought that crosses my mind, but I'm like, in hindsight, I look at like, holy shit, like I just did a mural for Kevin Hart. Like that just literally happened. And like, I'm meeting all these new people, like I'm meeting you, and I'm like making connections with people that I wouldn't have made in the relationship because I felt like I wasn't confident in myself enough to do so. In a breakup, it's so innate for people to like point fingers, you know, because it's like you did it or like you left or whatever. And for me, I'm learning that that's not healthy. And like even when other people hear about it, they're like, oh, she's like the monster, she's the victim, or like she's not the victim, I'm sorry, like she's the monster, and like she fucked it up. Or it's like, but you don't, I always remind myself, like, people don't really know what it's like to be in my shoes, or like I don't really know what it's like to be in your shoes. You know, I'm just learning to give myself grace. I was so hard on myself. Like I internalized that shame of like I hurt somebody, and I never want to hurt somebody, but when you choose yourself, like sometimes it comes with super painful like growing moments, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure there are people out there who, hopefully if you're listening, who are probably in those long-term relationships, and maybe, you know, it's like they're thinking the relationship doesn't serve them anymore. But the like hearing your process of how to break away from that relationship, it's going to be painful, but it's going to be so worth it, you know, from what comes. And there's going to be such a long healing journey, personal, sometimes even physical too. Like you were saying that you were not eating at all. And
I was so skinny. Like I would just be like, I'm sitting like right now, you can't really see like, but when I would be sitting, when I was going through that breakup, like you could just see my ribs. And like my face was just like, I don't know, I just did not look healthy at all, you know? And it scared me to even look at myself in the mirror. Like one day I looked at myself and I was like crying because I was like, am I ever going to get to a state of feeling content?
Yeah.
You know, and I was scared because I had made such a big life change. Like, honestly, to be fully transparent and like vulnerable, like I was sleeping on people's couches. And I was embarrassed, but then I'm like, now that I think about it, I'm like, no, I was doing my best to survive, and I'm still doing my best to survive, you know? And there's just no shame in that, especially as like a woman. There's no shame in choosing yourself, even if it comes with consequences like that. Because in the end, it'll be worth it, you know? And I feel like I'm knowing myself better and better each time. And when I step into a room, like I'm confident, and I know that when I say something, I say it with conviction. You know, usually I'd be like, I don't want to say anything. Like I'm feeling so low about myself. And like, I just didn't know who I was during those moments of like questioning my relationship. And I just feel like that legacy thing really, really kicked in, because I was like, am I going to stay in the same cycle, you know, of like, you know, because I think some of our family members stay in the marriage for comfort, for stability.
And it's like many times they already have they have kids already, and it's just like they just don't want to break apart the family. It's just totally understandable. Yeah, like I know
it's so complicated.
It's like their families, their parents are just like, they fight all the time, but it's like, do they want to divorce at this age? It's hard.
It's hard. Yeah. It's hard to say. So I'm really grateful that I'm able to pick myself back up, and also just feel like sometimes I just feel like sobbing. Just got to get it out, you know? This is like 9 years of my life. It's almost a decade. So just healing from that.
Something that I also saw on your Instagram account is that I don't think you've done this for a while, but there was a year at the end of the year where you did like 29 life lessons. Was this 2022 or 2021? I forgot.
This was 21.
2021.
Yeah.
So like end of 2021, I believe. Yeah. But you posted 29 life lessons that you learned. And so we are ending another year. Oh my God. Which is crazy.
Wow.
What do you think is a new lesson that you've learned this year that you'd like to impart?
Ooh, wow. Okay, a new lesson.
I can share mine too after.
Yes, I would love to hear yours. I always say this, but like giving myself grace. I think it's so layered because it goes back to childhood. Like I was the oldest, so I'm experimenting. Like I'm literally living life through like a curious lens, you know. And I wish that was something that was practiced in my household, because I could be so hard on myself. I'm like, no, I messed up. It's the end of the world. And my mom is the only person that knows about me. She will be like, Olivia, it's okay. She really knows me so well. And I would just say like the biggest lesson is just giving myself grace. Just being gentle with myself and embracing my softness. Cause I'm always like, what's up? Like, you know, like the oldest sibling, I can very much be in my masculine because I'm
so much in my masculine, honestly.
And sometimes it's exhausting.
It's hard to flip the script. I joked about it's like sometimes it's like I just want someone to take care of me, like low key, like anti-feminist. Like I don't know, but I just I don't like to be called a princess. Like I don't want to be called that, but like I'd like to be taken care of.
Yes, you know, like have someone bring you flowers or like give you a massage, like just to receive those things are like would be so nice. And I feel like embracing that softness, because for so long I've just been like, I don't know what it is about me, is that like I kind of lean towards more the masculine. I don't know. I haven't really unpacked that. Even just like the way that I dress, like my hair, you know, like the tattoos, it's kind of like wait, I don't want to say that's masculine though, but like just edgy, you know?
Yeah, I get you.
It really matters, like the environment that I'm in. Like whenever I go home to Long Beach, I'm always like,
got a code switch. Yeah.
yep. I'm like, who's walking behind me?
Mine is so similar with you, like in terms of runs parallel with embracing softness. It's just like, accept the help. Like that's literally what I've been learning this year, because I do everything myself, and I'm like, I'm not in a relationship. I'm always like by myself, so I'm very like self-sufficient, and I hate inconveniencing people. It's like it's not something that I enjoy doing, and I feel so guilty. And so I'm like, I could just do everything myself, and I always find myself like helping my other friends.
Is that like innate?
It's
like,
very innate. It's very innate, and it's never gonna change. It's just who I am, and I enjoy doing it. It's like I like to set people up for success. I meet a random girl at a party, I can find her a job the next week. It's like I'm just like, it's very crazy, but accept the help, because like, so I've been starting on this whole happy hour journey, which I really would love to make this into like a full-time passion, but like starting a passion project that's self-funded, you know, that's like,
yes, we're manifesting that. It's already happening. Look what's happening.
Yeah, and it's like I'm trying to like scale it, but having a podcast is hard to scale because everyone wants to listen to free content. And so editing this, filming, like everything I do by myself. And like I also have like an editing business freelance, and I was working a part-time job too, which, because I was like, I need like money, because I'm not making enough money, and I need to like support my hobby dreams. And I was just like thinning myself out. It was terrible. I was doing shift work from like, I'd wake up at 4 a.m. I would leave the house at 5 a.m., would work from 5:30 to 12:30 p.m. Or I would do a night shift from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m., come home at 10 p.m. and then do my editing work until like 6 in the morning.
Jeez.
And looking back, I was like, Melissa, that is actually disgusting. And
how were you functioning?
I was not, and that's how I got into my accident, because I was just like,
were you sleepy?
So I just like was not alert, I guess. I was not alert. And when that happened, I was like, Melissa, like
something's gotta change.
Something's gotta change.
Yeah.
Like you just, because I also grew up in like very big cities in Asia, and so like I've just learned not to trust people. I'm very like suspicious of everyone always. And sometimes like, and I always feel like everyone has an ulterior motive, but I genuinely have had people in the past who like would love to offer their help, like on the podcast, for example. And I've learned to like just to accept it, and also to accept my family's help too. I never want them to, it's like, I feel like I'm an adult, you know, I don't need their help anymore. But I was like, but Melissa, what is family for if they're not there for you? So also accepting help, because I'm very privileged to come from a very amazing family, so I'm able to do that. But yeah, accepting help has been a great lesson. But that's what I learned. Yeah. And this was a very stimulating conversation as well. And I think we chatted and jabbered away for quite a bit of time. But I'll address you by your artist name now. But Sawai, thank you so much for coming on Happy Hour.
Thank you for having
pleasure.
me.
And thank you so much for sharing and opening up. And I'm always so honored to be in a position where I can listen and to, you know, hear any thoughts that you want to unpack. So this has been fun.
I know. Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this since like you reached out to me, and then, you know, like we kind of had to change some dates and stuff, but I'm really glad. Like last night I was like, okay, this is going to be so fun, because based off of your energy, from what I see, I'm like, I fuck with her. Like,
yes.
Yeah. So thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you.